All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with Vaughn Dalzell. The winter of Vaughn continues in earnest. Thanks for being with me, Vaughn. Today we're going to talk college basketball, some regular season finales coming up. We'll also talk about the American League MVP market, which is much more interesting, I think, than the past 2 years because Shohei Ohtani no longer exists in that league. And then we'll talk about Karl Anthony-Towns tearing his meniscus and the repercussions of that into a range of futures and awards markets at the end. But let's start off with college basketball, Vaughn. And let's start with Kansas at the number one ranked team, Houston. This is the Saturday 4 p.m. Eastern game. Houston gave me a bit of a fright, needing to make a bit of hard work against UCF, but now they are in firm control to get the one seed in the Big 12. What are you expecting in this matchup?
Well, first off, it sounds like you've just been playing Houston against the spread and been sweating every game, but still winning tickets. Is that what's going on with you?
I just have a Houston to get the one seed to be the regular season conference winner, which to be fair, they've done the right thing by me for the most part, but there have been some really sweaty finishes between Baylor a couple games ago as well, was shared at the buzzer, but they do pull it out. And it seems like, the defense just seems to ratchet up a gear in the last 5 minutes of these close games.
Yeah, and you actually said a couple of things I want to hit on because I took a ticket out on a little bit of a long shot on the Kansas Jayhawks to win the regular season title in the Big 12 because it would be Houston's first time navigating through. And that's something Drew and I talked about on here and we both liked. But Houston continued to prove everybody wrong and say we are good enough to dominate the Big 12. And I'd say it's pretty much a two-team race when it comes to that conference tournament, which we'll get to. But when you look at the Kansas game, it's a revenge spot, which is always nice for the home team. Houston lost at Kansas, one of their only losses. Since then, they've won 8 straight games, been one of the best teams in the country. And you said something about that defense. Now, most of Houston's games lately have been close, but in the final 5, 8, 10 minutes, they've been able to pull away because their defense is so dominant. At home, Jay, this Houston team is ranked top 3 in the country when it comes to efficiency, turnovers, 2-point defense, free throw defensive rate, and a effective field goal percentage. So this team literally does everything at an elite level. I'm looking at Houston on the spread. If I get 30.5 or higher on the Kansas first half team total, I'm going under on that as my best bet for Saturday because I think Houston's going to lock Kansas up to make a statement entering the Big 12 tournament.
Okay, I like it. The defense is special. So with my bet for them to get the one seed, now when you're betting these type of markets, you need an innate understanding of how tiebreakers work in these conferences, which is just a complete debacle for the most part, trying to figure out how it works if it's tied with the regular season head-to-head, which it is in the case of Houston where they split against Iowa State. So, and it's kind of hard to verify this stuff online as to how it actually works, but my understanding is that Houston will get the one seed unless a 3-team parlay hits of Kansas winning at Houston, and they'll be, significant underdogs. Iowa State have to beat K-State away. And then I believe that Baylor also has to lose to Texas Tech, because if Baylor gets the 3 seed, then the respective records of Houston and Iowa State against Baylor becomes the tiebreak, and I believe Houston wins that. So if this goes down, Vaughn, if those 3 things still happen, I will take the week off and or relocate back to Australia. But I think it's pretty safe there. But what do you think is going to happen in the actual Big 12 tournament?
Yeah, I think it's a 2-team race. Houston's been a clear favorite. The odds haven't moved at all. They've been pretty solidified as a -175 to -200 favorite everywhere. And I think you could only look at Houston or Iowa State. These 2 teams are literally the best 2 defenses in the country. They force turnovers. They can play quickly on offense, or they could slow it down and grind you out, and they rebound well. And Kansas, Hunter Dickinson and a couple of Kevin McCallers, these type of guys have been nice additions and took Kansas to a top 10 level, but I don't think they're clearly as good as Houston or Iowa State, Jay. Now, obviously, Kansas is always going to be a tough out in the Big 12 tournament. There's no debate about that. But I would make this a 2-horse race rather than a 3-horse race, which I didn't expect entering or finishing this year for the Kansas Jayhawks.
Yep. No, Iowa State's been very impressive. One of the games I had to sweat out was Houston home to Iowa State, where Houston were
It's a great game.
Imperial favorites, but Iowa State just would not go away and couldn't really rest easy in that one until right at the death. Let's go to the ACC, the typical blockbuster matchup, UNC at Duke, Saturday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern. Now, my understanding as well, the tie breaks is that UNC effectively have the 1 seed wrapped up here, but always something at stake in this one. What are you expecting in this game in particular, and then also in the ACC tournament?
Yeah, I mean, no matter what the stakes are on this game, I think this game always going to remain competitive. And we've seen that over the years. You see the stats every year of how close it is over a 5 or 10 year gap. And obviously this year, I was on Duke earlier, and they lost 93-84 at North Carolina. This is a revenge game as well at home. And you're looking at North Carolina, who's coming off a senior day home victory where they dominated since the start of February. They're ranked 18th in the country, according to Bart Torvik. But for Duke, they're the 4th-ranked team in the country. They've coming off 3 straight dominant wins, playing their best basketball this season. Right now, the projected line for me is Duke 3.5 to 4, and that's a number that I'd be really looking at laying. And it's not the fact that I do love taking the underdog in this series, like I mentioned, but I think Duke right now is playing their best basketball this season, and I think North Carolina has a great defense. So while we saw 93-84, I will say don't rush to the window to bet the over in that game. I think things will slow down here because these teams will be potentially playing each other for the ACC tournament championship, which is what the odds are reflecting right now.
Yeah. And also, UNC just seem to randomly implode in these stupid games. Like they have losses to Syracuse, they lost to Georgia Tech, lost to Clemson. Now they did beat. Yeah, they did beat Duke the first time around, but yeah, I agree with you. Just given that they don't have a ton to play for, UNC, you'd expect that Duke will justify their favoritism in this one. All right, let's close out with the SEC, a conference that is going to cost me a lot of money given how Alabama have completely down the stretch. Much bigger fan of the Big 12 and the results in that conference than in the SEC. But the beneficiary of Alabama's relative collapse has been Tennessee, who have wrapped up the SEC regular season, 1 seed, and they play host to Kentucky, who seem to be, at least from my read, and I'm interested for your take, Vaughn, but they seem to be one of the most like high variance teams where they can beat or lose to anyone on a given day. What is your read? This one, Saturday, 4 p.m. Eastern, Tennessee at home.
Yeah, they are the home team, as you mentioned, and that's what they're great as. On defense at home, they are one of the best teams in the country. They force turnovers, they rebound well, defend the 3. But when you look at their road numbers, that's when they drop off. And it was interesting to them win a few games ago on the road in a big top 25 matchup. But here, I like Tennessee. You look at the spread, it's projected to be about 8 to 9 points here in favor of the Vols. You look at the Wildcats, while they've been impressive at 6-3 on the road this year, they struggle to defensive rebound on the road. And when you play really quick and you can't defensive rebound, you're giving teams a lot of second chance opportunities, and you do not want to give that to Tennessee, a team that's very, very old, I should say. They got a lot of seniors and juniors on that team, Jay. So a team like Tennessee that rebounds well, forces turnovers, is one of the best defenses at home, and can play quick like Kentucky. I mean, that's going to be a spot to take them in. So it's Tennessee or pass here for me. And I think if Tennessee wins the SEC championship, we're talking about them potentially being the number 1 seed, the 4th number 1 seed, or maybe Arizona, especially if the Washington State Cougars get Arizona in the Pac-12 championship.
Yep. No, I think that's fair enough. And a bit of a random aside, but I've had a few people reach out to me just asking, I want to get invested in March Madness. I just want to bet on someone to go all the way. Who do you recommend? And as someone who I don't follow college basketball as closely as you, Vaughn, so I'm not originating these markets. And so what I default to in that, in terms of giving out any form of advice, is just look at what the prices are on teams at market-making books like Circa and Bookmaker, and then compare that to the rest of the market, and then just take the best price. And I think that what some of the sharper books have arrived at is really protecting and being shorter on teams like Tennessee and Arizona as well, Iowa State to a degree too. And so there is a bit of disparity in the market on those 3 teams. So those would be the ones that, without being super informed on it, those would be the ones that I'd be hunting around to find best price.
And I'll say this quickly too, Jay, because on the last episode, Drew and I decided that we're taking Iowa State Final Four tickets.
Sure.
So you need to join us on that.
Okay.
We got the price. We got the price at plus. I got it plus 650 yesterday after the show, and not even 2 hours later, dropped to plus 500 on the same book. So I also think the wheels are starting to turn on some of these teams, Iowa State included.
Okay, Iowa State, great team to go to war with. Speaking of conference tournaments, Vaughn, the women's college basketball tournaments have already begun. Peacock is your exclusive home for Big Ten hoops, and the TIAA Big Ten Women's Tournament is underway as we speak. And in case you're wondering, Caitlin Clark and the Iowa Hawkeyes start their postseason march Friday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. And next Wednesday, the fun continues with the men's tournament. Start streaming now at peacocktv.com. All right, American League MVP, market close to my heart. It is why Aaron Judge's jersey hangs behind me today. Tyler Hero has been resignated to backup duty. So Aaron Judge, I think this market, it sort of starts with him, given that, as we mentioned, Shohei is no longer in the AL. So Aaron Judge, he is the favorite at plus 550 right there, with Juan Soto, followed by some of your usual suspects in Corey Seager, Julio Rodriguez, and Yordan Alvarez. Do you have any bets in this market at the moment, Vaughn?
So I don't have any bets in this market at the moment, but I feel like this is similar to a Ronald Acuna and Shohei Ohtani conversation, where it could be like a two-man race, especially if that New York Yankees offense actually lives up to its expectations. I think Aaron Judge and Juan Soto, while they're the two favorites, they feel like the clear guys to be putting money on here, Jay. And if you go down barely down the list, the only other guy that really intrigues me for a preseason bet would be Julio Rodriguez at 10-1. I'm not too timish on that, but I would say this. I feel like it'd be a year too early for Julio Rodriguez. He's still figuring out his game and getting better. But I don't know how you feel. I know if Aaron Judge gets hurt and you take a ticket on him, that's going to be a Jason Tatum jersey hanging up behind you in no time soon.
Jason Tatum. I don't know how I feel about Tatum. Tatum's been very potent for me over the journey. Might go
no
back
more
to
Marcus Smart.
Yeah, Marcus. I have 5 to 7 Marcus Smart jerseys in my wardrobe, literally, so they can all go through. They can make their way through the rotation. With Julio Rodriguez, I mean, he's an interesting one because he clearly has MVP upside. His rookie season, he was 5.5 WAR. Last season, 6 WAR, and that was he had a really bad start to the year, and then was just an absolute monster in the second half. I mean, his batting average increased from 249 to 308 in the second half. His WRC plus went from 103 up to 156. So yeah, he basically became twice as good of a hitter in a way, and obviously the WAR followed with that. I think the way to approach this market is to just develop an opinion first on Aaron Judge, because the past 2 years, what Judge has done in 2022, which as most will know, he hit 62 home runs and broke the AL record. He was 11.6 FWAR, which is like in the discussions for the greatest season of all time. And then I don't think people have really absorbed this because, he did his toe running into the wall at Dodger Stadium, and he only ended up playing 106 games. So it didn't really feel like an Aaron Judge season. Like statistically, when you look at the underlying stuff, Judge was even better last year than he was the year before. It's just he got a little bit unlucky on batted ball stuff. His exit velocity in 2022, when he hit the 62 homers, was 95.8 miles per hour. And then last year was 97.6. Like he was just absolutely smoking the ball. His hard hit rate went up. His barrel percentage went up. His expected slugging percentage was 721, and he only slugged 613. And he underperformed his expected stats in the 62 home run season too. So, I mean, if you just think that he's going to be that guy again, then he should be shorter than plus 550. I think the issue is that he is injury prone, and usually, just as a general rule, I kind of fade the idea of a guy being injury prone because often he gets just too baked into his price. And a guy is injury prone until he's not. Like James Harden just never got hurt in the NBA for years and years, and all of a sudden he gets hurt, and it can work the other way around too. And just I think there was the thought with Judge that he's 6'7", 282, and he plays center field. Like a guy just built like that as a human being just shouldn't be able to get through a 162 game season. And sure enough, I mean, basically he's only been fully healthy 2 of the past 5 seasons. So that is a concern. But I mean, what do you think in general of betting Judge and factoring in the health concerns?
Yeah, so I was going to ask you this with Juan Soto there. Do you think that takes away from his case at all because he'll be getting votes taken away? I mean, Juan Soto had a career high last year in home runs, almost led the league in walks. I mean, he did a Juan Soto type of season, and it didn't seem like, MVP type level for him.
No, I mean, I think with Soto, the issue is that I mean, last year the Padres were like relatively underwhelming. He got off to this really slow start, and I think the thing too with these kind of MVP races is that once you get off to a slow start and you just never get into the conversation, because Soto was just never going to beat Acuna or Betts after his start. He was always playing catch up.
Yeah,
You just kind of forget how good of a season that the player had. I mean, Soto last year, like he's above 900 OPS. He ends up at 5.5 WAR, 155 WRC plus. Like these are, superstar numbers. He is just about the safest bet in baseball in terms of just having a really high floor, just because of how good his eye is and how he's going to walk so much. He's not dependent on his defense to produce his WAR value. Like he is this in a way, and also because he's super durable. Like he's never missed time
yeah,
in
he
his
did
career, basically.
162 games last year.
Yeah, so he's
Yeah,
just like he is a workhorse. He doesn't play like a super violent style of game the way that say Ronald Acuna does, or in a way Aaron Judge does, just covering more ground at his size in center field. So Soto, I think, is just like if I had to make a bet on really anyone to produce like a 6 WAR season this year, it might be Juan Soto, just because of how high a floor and how safe he is. In terms of stealing credit from someone, I think that is usually overrated a little bit in baseball. Like the fact that Mookie Betts had, Freddie Freeman having an insane season next to him, that didn't really hurt him that much, I don't think. You think
that's a good point.
2 years ago, like Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado were, for a stretch, the two favorites for MVP. Just didn't matter. I think the way in baseball that works, because it is such an individual sport in a way. It's not like, LeBron making his teammates better with his passing. I think it doesn't work where like, oh, there's these 2-star players, they steal credit like Curry and Durant stole credit from each other. It's more that there's these 2-star players. You just pick who's the best one, and then he gets, and then he is out in front and he gets all the vote share. So not too worried about that. I think the most interesting dynamic between the two is just that Judge, much higher ceiling than Soto. Juan Soto is not going to put up 11.6 WAR like Aaron Judge did.
Yeah.
But Soto, much higher floor just because of the health, I think. Is there anyone else in this market who is interesting to Vaughn?
Not to me as much. I did want to get your take though on Mike Trout. What it's going to be like with him now without Shohei in town.
Yeah, Trout is another super interesting player in this market where I think everyone has just kind of moved on from Mike Trout as an MVP
Just done with
candidate.
him.
Yeah, I mean, and you get it because he hasn't topped 119 games in the past 4 seasons. Now, to be fair, one of those is the COVID season, but still, like, he just hasn't been healthy. He hasn't topped 140 games in a season since 2016, which is kind of insane. Now, admittedly, he did win an MVP in 2019, playing just 134 games, but I think there is the idea that, Trout is statistically, he really tailed off last year. He had this issue where he just couldn't punish fastballs like he has in his past. And that's usually a sign that, you're getting older and you're just not being able to punish pitches like you were at a younger age. And then also the Angels are just kind of the most blah team in the league now. They're projected like 75, 77 wins. So there's all of that. But at the same time, like this is a guy who is going to have an argument to go down as, one of the greatest players of all time. He's only in his age 32 season. Like this isn't like the Miguel Cabrera retirement tour or anything. And then the main thing for me is that 2022, 2 seasons ago, Mike Trout in 119 games hit 40 home runs. So if he played the whole season, you're looking at, an absolutely epic Trout year. He put up 6 WAR in 119 games. So if he was healthy the whole year, you're looking at an 8 WAR type of season. And then the team success thing just doesn't really matter that much for MVP. Like we've seen, Trout has made the playoffs once in his career. He's never won a playoff game, and he's won multiple MVPs. Shohei didn't make the playoffs in his MVP seasons. If the Yankees had missed the playoffs in Judge's 62 home run season, he still would have won. So I just don't think that matters that much. So when you're looking at guys who are 22 to 1 like Trout is, you want upside and you want variance. And we have it that Trout was, 2 years ago played at an MVP level, and he could just well be that same guy because he was dealing with injuries all last year. So outside of Judge, I think the best bet in this market is Trout at price, just because he has all that upside. At the same time, I would probably wait until the end of spring training just to make sure that he doesn't get hurt, given he always seems to get hurt. But what do you think of Trout in that argument?
I think it's an interesting angle to look at. And I got flashbacks of Bryce Harper leaving the Nationals, then the Nationals winning the World Series. No, I'm not going to say the Angels are going to do that, Jay. But, I mean, you talked about team success, and if the Angels did make a run or someone make the postseason without Shohei Ohtani, it would likely be because Mike Trout's having one of those magnificent seasons and hitting 40-plus home runs, maybe hitting 50 home runs. So I could see why 22 to 1 would be enticing there, and I don't hate that bet whatsoever. And I feel like I've been very chalky the last few episodes talking about the favorites here because we've been Acuna, Ohtani, Judge, and now Soto too. But I like your Mike Trout look, and I wouldn't mind throwing a few bucks on either him or Julio Rodriguez.
Yep, no, I like that. I think as well, like it's sometimes the right answer is chalk. Like you don't always have to hunt for long shots. You think about who won the NFL awards. Well, Christian McCaffrey was everyone's consensus best running back. He wins Offensive Player of the Year. Myles Garrett, consensus top 2 favorite for Defensive Player of the Year. He takes it over TJ Watt and Micah Parsons, the other 2 favorites for the award. Last year, Shohei, massive favorite going into the season, wins despite missing the last month of the season. And then Acuna, who didn't exactly come from the clouds, even though he was 10 to 1, 14 to 1 type of range before the year, but everyone knew that he had MVP upside. So sometimes, particularly in a 162 game season where there's just less variance, sometimes the best player is just the best answer for this award. And at price, I don't think the market is treating Acuna and Judge with enough respect, given that I think they are both clearly the best players in their respective leagues. All right, speaking of baseball, Vaughn, for those looking to get ahead on the upcoming MLB season, grab your Roto-World Baseball Draft Guide. It's loaded with comprehensive positional rankings, projections, and player profiles to ensure your draft is a success. Visit NBCSports.com/draft guide and use code BASEBALL24 to get 10% off at checkout. All right, we are recording Thursday afternoon, where it has been a weird Thursday of Karl Anthony-Towns injury news. It was reported by Shams Charania of The Athletic that Karl Anthony-Towns had torn his meniscus. And then Woj, in a kind of Aaron Judge versus Shohei Ohtani MVP battle against Shams from 2022, brought into the current day, he tweets out that Towns has a meniscus injury, doesn't say it's torn, and that he may not miss any time, which I'm guessing that they're just getting a second opinion at the moment. But we'll talk about the ripple effects of these markets with the assumption that Towns is going to probably miss some time or at least be limited. And he hasn't been playing well lately with managing this meniscus. But let's start off by talking about the Western Conference 1-seed market, which is effectively a 3-horse. You could say it's a 2-horse race if Towns is going to be out, with the Thunder and the favorites at plus 125, the Nuggets plus 135, your second favorite, and then we have the Clippers and the Timberwolves there. What do you make of this market in light of the Towns news?
Yeah, I wasn't feeling the Minnesota Timberwolves entering the All-Star break or posted. A lot of people were talking about they were one of the best bets to the over for their win total in the second half of the season because of their strength of schedule. But I just feel like the team, maturity-wise, was still lacking and had some depth to go. And, anytime you got Rudy Gobert on your team, Jay, I'm not quick to back you in the futures market. But I will say that I feel like it is a 2-team race. It's the Thunder and the Nuggets here. And I feel like whoever also wins, gets the 1 seed, that MVP conversation also is brought up now between the Thunder winning, getting the 1 seed, SGA, does he get MVP? And I know we're going to talk about that in the show too, because I'm holding an SGA MVP ticket. I also just placed the OKC number 1 ticket and to win their division. And it's been on the move the past 2 weeks. This has gone from plus 200 down to 120, back and forth every single game. But with the Nuggets playing the Celtics, because we're taping before the game, There's still options for the Thunder to now be -110 or more if the Nuggets do lose to the Celtics. So I love the Thunder. They got the slightly easier strength of schedule. I feel like they're like the 2014 Hawks. They get that 1 seed and then they get bumped. So I like the Thunder in this market. Jay, have you placed anything?
I do not have any one seed bets, but I am very much sweating the Thunder winning the Northwest Division, which is, I guess, basically a
Nice.
proxy at this point for the one seed. If we assume that the
Yep.
Clippers, just how they're playing at the moment, they don't have the tiebreak against Oklahoma City in particular. I don't think they're going to factor in for the one seed. Wouldn't put a line through them, but they are further down the odds for a reason. I think to your point about schedule, I think that is really key. And obviously, this Denver-Boston game is going to shape a lot of this market. But in terms of schedule, and I brought this up before, but it's really important to not just look at like what the remaining opponent's strength is based on winning percentage. Like the other key factors, like how rested are you? The Clippers' rest schedule is insanely bad the rest of the way, where I think they still have like 5 back-to-backs and they only have more than 1 day's rest, like once more the rest of the season. And they're an older team. So that really hurts them beyond what the opponent's strength is. Home road balance as well is obviously big. And then the other thing to me that's important is who do you play the last couple games of the season? Because if you have you want to play the best teams or the hardest teams on your schedule right at the end, because there's just a chance that they're not playing their guys and they have nothing to play for. Yep. And that is definitely advantage Oklahoma City relative to Denver, because OKC's last 2 games are Milwaukee and Dallas. And there's a good chance that Milwaukee in particular may not have anything to play for because they'll be locked into a 2 or a 3. And they are the exact type of team who would rest their guys, given how old they are and looking forward. And then Dallas on the last day, that may mean something for Dallas, it may not. And then with Denver, their last 2 games, San Antonio and Memphis, who they're going to beat those teams wherever they are on the schedule if they need them. So I think that Oklahoma City are rightfully favorites in this market, but this is something that changes night to night. Like OKC very nearly lost to Portland the other night. But let's pivot to MVP, given that this is very closely correlated with the 1 seed market. Jokic still sizable favorite over SGA. How are you feeling about your SGA ticket at the moment, Vaughn?
Yeah, I mean, the odds really haven't moved in weeks. Like Joker hasn't gone past 150 really at most places for the last 2 or 3 weeks. And I feel like Drew talked about this because he said that Jokic is clearly a bigger favorite. He'd make this more out the 220, 250 range. And I don't know. I think that SGA, because of that 1 seed factor, is why he's been hanging around this market. And when we talked about the scheduling, over the next 7 games are great matchups for SGA. 5 of the next 6 games in particular at home, where they're getting the likes of Miami, Memphis twice, Indiana, Dallas, Utah, and you go on the road to Toronto. So these are just all great games for SGA to continue racking up 30-plus points. I do think it's solidified two-man race. I've enjoyed betting Luka Doncic's triple-doubles over the last 3 or 4 games and getting that 2-to-1 price. But when you're scoring 40 and triple-doubling, Jay, and then taking 10 or 20-point losses, you're clearly not going to win MVP. This is an MLB. So I think, it's a 2-man race, and I'm cool with SGA at this 2-to-1 price still. How are you feeling?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think at current prices, I'd definitely rather be on SGA. I agree as well that Luka, I mean, I think you can basically just put a line through Luka Doncic at this point now. He's so good that he could rip off an insane month and they could go ballistic and get the 5 seed, but that's probably that's much, much longer than what his current price is for MVP. So I don't think he's really in this discussion. I think Giannis is more likely to win than Luka. I don't think Giannis is particularly likely either, particularly after getting blown out against Golden State, which really stunted his momentum. So I think for the most part, unless Giannis wants to rip off another winning streak and destroy Shea in their head-to-head matchup in 2 weeks and beat Boston a couple of times, I think this is very likely a 2-horse race. And coming or in All-Star break, I thought that Shea should just be favored over Jokic, and I thought that if the status quo endured and OKC finished ahead of Denver in the standings, then Shea would win MVP. Now, the status quo didn't endure because Jokic came out of the All-Star break like an absolute madman and had his best stretch of the season and has been playing incredibly well, although he had a really poor game by his standards against Phoenix where he had 5 assists and 7 turnovers. But he had a shot at the buzzer to walk it off against Phoenix, and it missed by about an inch on the bounce off the rim. And I think if that ball had fallen in and instead of kind of bouncing out in the direction of Aaron Gordon, that is the type of moment, particularly against the Nuggets that already won 6 straight, to get a 7th straight win on national TV on a Jokic buzzer beater. Like, that is the type of moment that shifts like 20% of the equity in the MVP market. But ball bounced out, and then the Nuggets lose in double digits in overtime. And now I think it's much more open. And I think the key is that, and it's a strange way to frame this, but I think that Shea is a much higher floor candidate and a less variable candidate because he just does the same thing every night. Like, every night he's just 31, 6 and 5, good plus minus. They're going to finish at like 57 wins thereabouts. And whereas with Denver, Jokic goes from like revving it up on national TV, taking 11 shots in the first quarter and playing like it's a playoff game, to just kind of like doing nothing in these random games where he'll take like one shot in a quarter. And so I think that MVP is kind of in Jokic's hands, where if he just goes all out the rest of the way and they get the 1 seed, then he's definitely going to win. But if he keeps on kind of doing what he's doing and slows down, and they get 2 games behind OKC and they lose the tiebreak to Oklahoma City as well, which I think is material, then I think that SGA getting the 1 seed would propel him. So I think the best way to think about this market at the moment is that the Thunder are plus 125 to get the 1 seed, and SGA is plus 240 to win MVP. And I think the gap between those two prices is just too significant. I don't think SGA is like auto win with the 1 seed, but I do think that he is more likely than that gap implies. What do you think about that? What do you think of Jokic's chances if SGA gets the 1 seed?
Yeah, I think that's the key to SGA's case here, because if there's going to be a runaway candidate, you were kind of hitting on. I think Jokic, if he has a great second half, they get the 1 seed. SGA's case is what? He's another 30 plus point scorer on a number 2 seed in the NBA. Jokic is almost averaging near a triple double. SGA's case is not nearly as impactful, I think, if they don't get the number 1 seed. That's why I said they're the most unlikely 1 seed since the Hawks 10 years ago. But I think that they're built so young and so well that they've been holding on to these their picks too. Like, they haven't been making trades and getting rid of these picks because they're still building. So I'm excited to see where this goes. And I do agree with you. You should be shopping these markets that are correlated, because if you go take the Northwest Division price on the Thunder right now, you might get a plus 150. A plus 110 is what I saw in the book I shop at. And then for the 1 seed, it was plus 140. So obviously I'm going to take the plus 140 because they'd have to beat out the Nuggets for the 1 seed. So make sure you're shopping around for those differences too, how Jay mentioned with MVP to the 1 seed.
Yep, definitely. Okay, before we get out of here, a couple last awards markets just to hit on quickly that are affected a little bit by the Towns injury, non-injury, whatever it is. Coach of the Year, I think Chris Finch was losing steam for that award anyway. My sense there is that even if Finch was the 1 seed, that wasn't going to guarantee him anything. Obviously, he'd be live to win Coach of the Year, but Mark Daigneault has a ton of momentum and he's been winning all the polls. Now, Joe Mazzulla's price is completely cratered in the market, where he was, 20 to 1 range. Now he's into like plus 350 some spots. I think with Mazzulla, like that loss to the Cavs on national TV, where they completely imploded and blew a 22-point lead to a Cavs team without Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley by the end, like that was a complete mess. So it is difficult for him to withstand those type of losses. I think he needs to win like 66, 67 games and have OKC fall off. But for the moment, I think this is Daigneault's award to lose. The guy who I'd be keeping an eye on each night is Jamal Mosley and the Magic. The Magic are on a 4 seed right now, which is kind of insane for a team that was expected to, potentially be a play-in team. I don't think he will win unless Daigneault falls off, but, it's one team and he's the only really scary candidate at the moment. So if Daigneault was to fall off and they, are a distant 2 seed, or they even fall to the 3, and the Celtics kind of take the foot off the gas because they're 8 games clear for the 1 seed, then Mosley is the type of guy I think who could come in. So that is more of a watch for the moment. And then 6th man of the year, Vaughn, Malik Monk goes crazy against the Lakers, helps them, really changes the game by himself, which sickens me to say, but he did. He played really, really well. And with that kind of end of the first quarter, second quarter burst, changed the game. The Kings win. They get separation from the bottom end of the play-in. But Karl Towns being hurt does help Naz Reid a fair bit in terms of his usage, his minutes. He'll have narrative. Like if the Wolves were to get the 1 seed after Towns going down and Naz Reid is a big part of that, then all of a sudden he becomes pretty live. But what do you make of Sixth Man of the Year in light of the Towns injury?
I was going to say Naz Reid certainly became more live after our conversation a few days ago. Obviously, Norman Powell, we were saying, was probably the best hedge right now if you're holding a Malik Monk ticket, but Naz Reid could see a boost now in usage, points, rebounds, minutes, everything. So I think that's where I would be looking in this market if you're trying to hedge out Malik Monk. I think he could be running away with this, Jay. And I love the Jamal Mosley look there for Coach of the Year market. This is definitely a pro Orlando Magic show, and I've been heavily invested into the Magic this season, so I think that would be pretty cool. But races like this year between the Thunder and the Celtics and their head coaches and all these MVP candidates makes me realize, like, I would love to have an Eastern and Western Coach of the Year award because if, Mazzulla does go out and get 66, 67 wins, Jay, like the Heat did back in LeBron's era, it's hard not to give that man an award if the Thunder even do get the number 1 seed. So it's going to be an interesting race down the stretch. But I think Malik Monk's probably clearly running away with this compared to the Coach of the Year market, which is still a little up in the air.
Yep. No, I agree with that. Yes, we love the Orlando Magic here as well. Big Magic fans between them cashing the 2018-19 Southeast Division at like 50-1 or something, and then Paolo Banchero going 1, still close to my heart. Have 3 Paolo jerseys, so not quite the 5 to 7 Marcus Smart jerseys, but in the same ballpark. I think last thing on Sixth Man of the Year, Bobby Portis has been going insane lately. Like he's just been out of his mind for a week or so. I get it with Portis in that, his counting stats are probably, you could argue, better than Naz Reid and Norm Powell. I think the issue with Portis is just like, what is his superlative? Like he's not the best at anything. He's not really even top 2 at anything among candidates. I think people just kind of realize like Bobby Portis is fine, but he's not that good. His advanced stats are terrible. The Bucks are like significantly better when Portis is on the bench. Now, I think with this surge, you have to take him seriously as a potential threat. But I think the problem for him is that he's been doing all of this while Chris Middleton is out. And in games where Middleton is out, I think Portis's usage rate is like 28%. And then when Middleton plays, it goes all the way down to 20%. Like that is a massive decrease. And so, Doc Rivers might just say like, all right, coming off this stretch, like Portis has to play, he has to get shots in a way that he wasn't previously when Middleton was healthy. So at his current price, no interest in Portis in the 10-1 range. If I was making a bet at the moment, like Naz Reid has drifted out to 19-1 some spots, which I think is a touch too big. I think he should be more in the 9-1, 10-1 range. The way that I price this out is I've got Monk at 73%, which is depressing to say out loud, but he's just the 2 of his past 3 games have just been so huge against the Wolves and the Lakers. I have Naz at 10%, Powell 8%, Bobby 5%, and then the field, which is largely populated by Karis LeVert and Tim Hardaway. LeVert was atrocious against Atlanta, shooting 5 of 17. Feels like he is coming to a close. He just can't make a shot. Like he does everything else relatively well, but can't put the ball through the hoop, which is a problem in basketball. So he is, I think, on life support. And then Tim Hardaway Jr. has just been horrific for 2 months now. He was minus 150 to win this award at one point, Vaughn, and now he's I think he's just like completely dust unless he goes on some insane shooting streak for a month. But like I wouldn't be backing 40-1 on Hardaway at the moment. Can't put a line through these guys just because Monk, as solid as he is not unbeatable. And certainly the award isn't done, but it looks like Monk and at price Naz Reid, just because he has differentiators, like particularly if Karl Towns is out and they're tied for the 1 seed as we're speaking. So I think that he has a path which is differentiated from Monk to potentially get it done.
Yeah, and if Naz Reid also has such a high usage increase with Towns potentially out, and they still somehow get a 1 seed or 2 seed, I mean, the case for Naz Reid is substantially higher too, especially because we spoke on a few days ago the Kings make the play-in opposed to the top 6, that really hurts Monk's case too. So yeah, I love your look on Nas Reed and what could be, but yeah, let's just root for someone other than Malik Monk. It sounds like.
Yep. Operation beat Malik Monk, losing soldiers by the day, but still out on the battlefield, fighting for dear life. All right, we are done. Don't forget to check out NBCSports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks to those watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to rate and subscribe. Also, a reminder to find all your favorite NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. I'm Jay Croucher and Vaughn Dalzell. Have a great weekend and good luck with your bets.